Hello everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're stepping right into the ring for what is basically a heavyweight economic bout between South America's two absolute biggest players, Argentina and Brazil. We're pulling straight from some incredibly comprehensive data and assessments from the World Bank and the IMF to bring you a really clear, structured breakdown of these massive economies. We're going to look at their strengths, their glaring weaknesses, and ultimately see exactly how they stack up head-to-head. Right off the bat, this is the core question we want to answer today. I mean, when you look at the sheer scale of the South American continent, these two nations cast by far the longest shadows. But as we know, economic dominance isn't just about geographic size, right? It's about resilience, resources, and stability. Okay, let's dive into this and establish our baseline data. Section 1. Let's look at the tail of the tape before this match officially begins. Looking at these starting stats, we immediately see a stark contrast. On one side, we have Argentina. We're looking at a population of about 47 million people and a nominal GDP hovering somewhere between $700 and $800 billion. They use the Argentine peso. On the other side, Brazil, an absolute titan. We are talking about roughly 212 million people and a staggering GDP of $2.3 to $2.5 trillion, operating on the Brazilian real. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that third row. Despite Brazil's overwhelming, massive size advantage, Argentina actually boasts a higher GDP per capita. So right away we know this isn't just a simple story of the biggest country winning everything. There's some incredible productivity happening in Argentina. Still, we absolutely cannot ignore this massive gap in nominal GDP. $2.5 trillion versus $800 billion. That is a huge difference. This gap establishes Brazil's sheer scale as Latin America's largest economy by a mile, whereas Argentina ranks globally as a medium-sized economy. Brazil has this sort of gravitational pull that impacts the entire region, while Argentina kind of punches above its weight class in very specific high-value areas. Moving into Section 2, let's look at their strengths. High-stakes potential versus the economic juggernaut. What actually makes both of these nations global powerhouses?
Well, Argentina's resources are genuinely incredible. First off, they're a world-leading exporter of agricultural commodities. Soybeans, corn, wheat, they're absolutely world-famous beef and wine. But they aren't just farming, you know? They have a highly educated workforce with a fantastic literacy rate and a massive pool of engineers and scientists. And then there's the earth itself. They are sitting on massive reserves of copper and lithium. And lithium is that absolutely vital material, literally powering the smartphone in your hand right now or the electric vehicle in your driveway. Add to that Vaca Muerta, which is one of the world's absolute largest shale oil and natural gas formations, and man, you have a country with phenomenal energy and export potential.
Now, contrasting those resources with Brazil reveals a truly diversified juggernaut. Brazil is also an agricultural powerhouse, but on an entirely different scale. Think about it. If you had coffee this morning, or sugar, or orange juice, there's a very good chance it came from their agricultural machine. They're also leading global exporters of poultry and soybeans. Beyond that, they have rich natural resources like iron ore, gold, oil, and extensive hydropower. But here is the real game changer. Brazil has a very strong industrial base. We're talking about manufacturing aircraft, automobiles, machinery, and steel. And tying the whole shebang together is one of the most sophisticated, highly developed banking and financial systems in the emerging world. And to really cement Brazil's scale, we have to look at this number: over 200 million consumers. That is a massive domestic market. It means that even before Brazil exports a single coffee bean or airplane part, they already have a huge internal population driving constant, strong demand. This domestic base is exactly what fuels those advanced banking systems and supports their vast manufacturing sectors.
But every giant struggles, right? So, Section 3, let's look at their Achilles heels: instability versus friction.
So, the crucial point is, when we look at their weaknesses side by side, we see two totally different types of battles. Argentina fights a really chaotic war of macro instability. They deal with very high, chronic inflation that can literally erode wealth overnight, constant currency devaluation, and a history of frequent debt defaults that frankly severely damage their international standing. Brazil, on the flip side, fights a much slower-moving battle of structural friction. They don't have Argentina's runaway inflation, but they suffer from sluggish productivity growth, massive infrastructure bottlenecks that make moving goods really tough, a dizzyingly complex tax system, and deeply ingrained income inequality. Diving a bit deeper into Argentina's core issue, IMF reports consistently point to policy volatility. And this isn't just about inflation. It's about the rules of the game constantly changing. When political and economic policies shift as frequently as they do there, it creates a severe layer of uncertainty for businesses. I mean, imagine trying to plan a 10-year manufacturing project when you have no idea what the currency or the export taxes will be next year. This volatility naturally makes foreign investors highly cautious, and that results in much lower investment capital flowing into the country, despite all those amazing natural resources we just talked about.
Meanwhile, Brazil's hurdles are much more structural. Yes, they avoid Argentina's rapid currency chaos for sure, but doing business in Brazil means navigating a bit of a maze. They have high public spending and debt, which constantly requires really strict fiscal discipline to manage. Then you've got transportation and logistics bottlenecks. It is a huge country, so getting goods from the interior farms all the way to the coastal ports increases business costs significantly. Combine that with a really complicated regulatory and tax environment, and you get what economists often call a friction-heavy economy. It's stable, yes, but it is heavy to move.
All right, Section 4, the head-to-head verdict. Based on the World Bank and IMF assessments, let's see how they score. And this scorecard brilliantly illustrates the dynamic between the two. When it comes down to economy size, population, manufacturing capacity, and banking, Brazil takes the win. They also win decisively on macro and currency stability. However, Argentina claims victory in some very specific, highly lucrative niches. For beef quality, premium agricultural exports, critical minerals like lithium, and overall GDP per capita, Argentina is the clear winner. So basically, Brazil wins on brute scale and foundational stability, while Argentina takes the categories based on specialized, high-value resources and individual economic output. But when we ask the international institutions for a definitive overall winner, here is the consensus. Quote, Brazil has the stronger and more resilient economy overall due to its scale, diversification, macroeconomic stability, and investment attractiveness. In the eyes of both the IMF and the World Bank, Brazil's sheer size and relatively predictable environment make it the overall dominant economic force in Latin America.
But listen, we absolutely cannot write off Argentina. Their long-term potential in agriculture, energy like the Vaca Muerta formation, and critical minerals is world-class, no doubt about it. However, all of that potential is entirely locked behind a door. To open it, Argentina urgently requires stable macroeconomic policies, controlled inflation, strengthened institutions, and a complete restoration of investor confidence. They have all the right ingredients. They just need a stable kitchen to cook in.
Which leaves us with this final thought to wrap up our explainer today. Brazil undeniably holds the title of the region's diverse economic juggernaut, mostly thanks to its massive scale. But looking forward, the most exciting question for the global economy might actually be this. Can Argentina finally stabilize its policies and tame its inflation to unlock its massive world-changing potential? How these two nations navigate their respective hurdles is really going to dictate the future of South America. Thanks so much for joining me to break this down, and keep learning.